All right, boys and girls. All right, boys and girls, welcome to the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast, the real life. Thomas is probably laughing on the background because I started the intro and then I realized I didn't hit the go live button. So you guys, you missed on my intro, but that's good. Anyways, we're at the real life here at the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast. As always, it's your boy Armando. We're gonna have a great episode for you today. Before we get started, just to remind everyone, if you are watching on YouTube or Facebook, please leave us your comment. Let me know where you're watching from. If you are listening to our MP3 format, whether on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave us your 5-star reviews. It really does help out with the growth of the podcast. And yeah, welcome to once again to the Real Life on the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast. Lately, I haven't been able to post a lot. For those that have been following me and known me for years, if you remember, I used to work at American Airlines here in DFW Airport. I retired for them. I kind of took a sabbatical. My wife was, holding down the fort. And then this year, a few months ago, I got my license as a home inspector here in Dallas and Fort Worth. So if you're in the market for a home here in Dallas and Fort Worth, hit me up on our social media accounts, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok on the Bass Kayak and Beers. If you're not familiar with what is a home inspector, basically, if you're going to buy a home, usually you want to get it inspected to get all the conditioning, any deficiencies on any conditioning like heating and cooling, foundation, roofing, structural, anything and everything, all the systems and components in the house. I take a year-long training, and I have to be licensed by the Texas government. So it's a pretty good gig. I love it. I love, getting into homes and kind of like breaking down every component and aspect of it, and then helping out home buyers to kind of know what they're getting into. And sometimes they'll use that information to renegotiate the price if some of the houses have, some defects that may need to get fixed. So anyways, yeah, so that's what I'm doing now. So it's been really busy. I haven't been able to fish a whole lot, and I haven't been able to post a whole lot. So that's what's going on. But anyways, you're here to listen to the Texas River Junkie, Thomas Griffin. And we're going to bring him right in, and we're going to talk about Texas river fishing. And what better person to talk to than Thomas Griffin? Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time to joining us, man.
My pleasure. How are you?
Pretty good, man. Thank you so much. Like I said, I am a huge fan. Like I said on my stories on Instagram when I was doing the promo, I've followed your account for like a couple of years now. And I love it. I love what you guys in Central Texas are doing with river fishing. You, Manny Varela with Skinny Water Boys TV. I love Eric Celerio. I know we were talking about in the pre-recording. He's kind of busy with life right now, but I was one of my favorite accounts just because, Eric just has a contagious smile, and he seemed like he always having fun and enjoying river fishing as well as you and as well as Manny Varela. So let's talk a little bit about that, man. What got you into river fishing?
I mean, the fishing came second. It was really just the running of rivers that really kind of got me into it. Like I was telling you earlier, I grew up here in Bernie, which is basically, just about 25, 30 miles just northwest of San Antonio, which is like at the base of the start of the hill country. The Guadalupe River is not far from here. And, in high school, me and the buddies, we would either tube it or we grabbed some old, sit inside, 8-foot, 10-foot long kayaks and just, we'd have to bail water after every rapid, but, we had a blast just, running it. And those were back in some, a lot wetter years than what we've seen recently. But that was just like, that was the start of it. And then, I started spending more time, and then I was like, oh, I'll bring a fishing pole. And, next thing you know, I'm catching fish, and I'm like, oh, well, this is fun too. So, I started breaking down that, and then I got more into that. Like I kind of fished here and there growing up. I always had a ranch to go to, or go. My grandfather had a bay house down in Port Alto, and we would go down there, and we would always we'd take the boat out, go red fishing or trout or something like that. So like that kind of seeded my love of the fishing. aspect of it. So that's kind of like where that started, and that just kind of was kind of blended together. So yeah, that was the beginning of that.
Do you often just go out to paddle without even taking a pole, go fishing, or do you now have gone to a point where every time you go, you're out there fishing for the most part?
It depends. I mean, if we see like a good rise in the river and it gets real chocolatey and it's moving real fast and stuff, no, I'll leave the poles at home and I'll just go just for a fun lap, up and down, just to run rapids or little drops here and there, and and I'll do that usually in my fishing kayak, with other friends and stuff. But I've also got I've got a couple of whitewater boats, and I kind of dabbled in that throughout, after high school, being able to travel. And my wife went to Texas State up in San Marcos, and the San Marcos Rivers, starts in the heart of that city. And the dam that they call Rio Vista, it's a couple of drops, 3 drops. They actually call it Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and and Baby Bear, and because there's one's bigger and they gradually get smaller. But you can, if you get a short boat with a spray skirt where you're like locked in, all that kind of stuff, you can surf some of those waves. You can play with the current going back and forth and all that kind of stuff. And I would go down there and visit my wife on the weekends and stuff, and we would fish the river. But I also noticed, a lot of whitewater boaters that would paddle in the paddling park, and they were doing slalom and all that kind of stuff. If you're familiar with that, where it's like gates that they're trying to make going up and down the river, and that just fascinated me. And I was like, oh, I need to get into that. And so got a boat, and I got all the gear that went with it. And I mean, that was couple $1,000 just to get started in doing that. And I started doing that, and then I started traveling to, I've been to Colorado a couple times to do some whitewater kayaking and rafting, and then I've also been out to the Appalachian Mountains and done some there too. So I mean, it's just like, it's not really fishing. I mean, more so these days, just because the rivers have been hurting, so it's not like a whole lot of riding rapids. It's more fishing, but it's an equal love for both, I'd say.
What fish particularly target? I'm assuming Guadalupe bass, since you live in that side of the Texas.
I do. I mean, I love the largemouth too. I mean, I'm not going to be, whoever wants to grab onto that hook, but I mean, I do a lot of soft plastic fishing. I'm not a real big fan of treble hooks. They kind of scare me a little bit, I guess. I mean, that's probably awkward to say on a fishing podcast, but they've always been kind of weird to me. But I'm a topwater fanatic. I absolutely love topwater. I will throw a topwater all year long. And I mean, that's probably another thing that I probably shouldn't say on here either, but it's not wrong, because was it January 1st of 2022, I actually caught a fish on topwater. So I was like, that was the first fish of the year, topwater, last year. So, but it's a lot of, I like to do a lot of little swim baits, mid-sized lures kind of thing, somewhere between the 4 to 6 inch range, something like that. Nothing too crazy big. I try not to get into the whole big swim baiting craze that everybody gets into. It's a lot of Guadalupe bass, a lot of fish in those eddies, a lot of fishing above and below the shoals and the little riffles and currents and the pools, basically. So that's where it's at.
Going back to the treble hook thing, I can totally get it. Like if you're fishing on a river, it's there's a lot of more stuff going on than just fishing on a lake.
Yeah.
So you're getting snagged on the river. It's a lot, especially moving water. It's a lot different than getting snagged, in a lake, that it's kind of open water and you can easier to maneuver to get back to your bait. So no, I get the whole treble hook thing. The swim bait culture, I don't know how to describe it. I don't hate it. I'm not dissing on anybody, but it's really I really think it's kind of become its own subculture. Like
absolutely,
big swim baits is it's just it's a cult following. to a certain degree now.
I believe it. I mean, there's some people out there that don't, they buy these big, fancy, expensive baits, and they'll put them on their wall behind me in the garage, and just to show them off and stuff. And, I'm like, I want to kind of fish, but like, I'm not partial to it one way or the other. I mean, I'm like, I get stuff hung up in trees. I'm running these tight, skinny rivers where I'm ducking branches and stuff. I'm not looking to break, a $300, $400 rod. I'm not looking to lose that rod and reel combo. I'm not looking to lose a $300-$400, swim bait in a tree and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, I try to keep it simple. But yeah, I mean, any day on the river it's a good day for me. I don't care if I've got a pole or not. I mean, it's a love for the river, from top to bottom. So.
What I appreciate about what you just mentioned, the fact that you actually do like whitewater, before. So it's you're a fisherman because you were a river junkie versus I like the river because I love chasing bass, kind of thing. So you started off at the core, you're a river guy.
Yeah.
Not a fishing guy, which you are as well, but at the core of it, you're a fishing guy. So I think, and that's why I appreciate you coming in, because I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the best kayaks, in your opinion, for river fishing. Because obviously you have that in your DNA where you do, whitewater kind of thing, and you also do the fishing. So probably more than most what it takes to be on the water and what is a good hole design that's going to help you fish and handle moving water. With that being said, what do you feel are some of your favorite kayaks have you tried? And when you are looking for a kayak, let's say I've been looking for a skinny water kayak, and I go back and forth. I did a demo day with Mariner Sales, shout out to Duke Tran, and I tried like 10 different, river style kayaks. And I really, I see the difference between one and difference between the other. And I'm going on and on here. So I'll let you answer that question. What do you feel is like the best river kayak? What should people look for when buying a river kayak for fishing?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of factors. Obviously, it really depends on the river that you're looking to spend most of your time, or the collection of rivers that you're looking to spend time on, because a lot of these, some rivers, they run, higher than others for longer. And, some, you want to be able to just kind of, scoot through some of that real shallow water. So, I mean, obviously, if we're talking just kind of general kayak construction, you want something, to hold you and your gear. So that'd be somewhere between 10 to 12 feet. And then something, about 32 inches wide, maybe a little bit wider. And then something that's got a little bit of a good hole design where it's, it's kind of flattened out, but it's still got a little bit, maybe on the keel or something like that, to where it kind of helps you track a little bit. But I got into, when I got into fishing, it was when I got into running the rivers, here, it was really just whatever got me on the water. And so I started out with like a Dick's Sporting Goods Special kayak sit inside. It had rod mounts, on the back, but it was, I was bailing after every single rapid on some of the bigger ones where, you would punch that nose through like a wave at the bottom of a rapid, and it would just swamp the inside of the boat, and you'd have to pull over and dump everything out. But that was perfectly fine for me. But I spend more time and I start seeing other things on the river and that kind of stuff. And I was kind of reluctant at first to get into a sit on top kayak, but this was like way back when, before they even had like the chair style. Like it was just, you sit on the bottom of it, and your butt's wet all the time, and there's not much of a backrest. You're not up high or anything like that. And I was kind of more like, I'm okay with sitting inside, locking my knees into the inside of the hull and being able to, twist, my core and be able to help turn that boat a little bit. And, you get into some of these little low water rapids and stuff, and it's tight turns, and, you gather speed coming down a rapid, and all of a sudden it's a hard right. So you got to be able to turn. And, So that with that kind of segues into a paddle. I mean, a paddle is really your biggest, helper while you're navigating a river, being able to to do forward strokes and reverse strokes and use it as a rudder and to kind of point you where you want to go, and being able to use it in moving water, to where is you're not just kind of flailing around and hoping that it works out. So that's I started out, like I said, with that Dick's special kayak, which was perfectly fine. I mean, I took that thing. I actually still own it. My buddy's got it, and I have a hard time selling kayaks. It's easy to. Yeah, I've
go attached to them.
I've probably got about 9.
Wow.
But yeah, and then from there, I graduated up, and I went and bought a 10-foot sit on top, and it was a Jackson Cruise, and it was their 10-foot version of like a touring style kayak, and it ran rivers great, and I mean, it was short enough to where I could catch an eddy after a rapid. I could peel out of an eddy into the current, no problems. And I used that one for quite a while. Ran it on the Devils a couple of times, and then they came out with when Drew was with Jackson Kayak, they came out with the Kusa HD, and I was like, I need that boat. So got that, and I ran in 2017. I got a Kusa HD, ran that thing up until last year. When I got kind of tired of all the extras, all the the kayaks started turning into Swiss Army knives. I mean, there was there's every little thing, and I was like, I really need to I want to get back to those simpler days and just keep a simple platform. Something where my deck's clean. I don't have a whole bunch of stuff hanging off of it that's going to get me all, tangled up in some low limbs, hanging over the river or something like that. So I was like, I started looking. I looked for a year before I finally landed on the Crescent Light Tackle, and that one's a great boat for the river. It's a nice, about 12-foot long boat and nice stability. It's got a high seat option to where I can get up there and really just kind of look around, do a lot of, sight casting, a lot of, being able to see that structure, those perfect spots where you want to place your lure. So yeah, the Jackson boats were really great. And that was because they kind of really started from being a whitewater boat company. And Eric Jackson took those designs and put them into fishing, because he was a fisherman. He was a whitewater paddler first and a fisherman second, and he kind of blazed the trail for that style of river fishing. Between him and Drew, I mean, they just kind of they went forward to it, and I've always followed like Drew's style and all that kind of stuff. And he back before even the HD came out, he took the old Kusa, the original, the OG is what they call it, down the Devil's River, and like that's where I fell in love with that whole river. Was he did a series on that, and that's where I literally stumbled across this video. Never heard of the Devil's River, saw what they were doing, and I was like, I got to get there. And man, it's just that was probably what opened the door and started an addiction for doing this like every weekend. And I mean, you can ask my wife, it kind of drives her crazy sometimes, but I literally will go fishing every weekend as long as it's free, as long as there's nothing going on. I mean, I don't care if it's 19 degrees outside or if it's 119
degrees.
It got cold this winter. I was actually out there paddling around on the river.
And the last 3 winters, they gotten cold.
Yeah, well, that's true too. But I mean, I ran into ice sheets on the river this year, which was new for a Texan. Like that's new to me, especially a South Texan, really.
Yeah.
And I was having fun. I was having fun just kind of like Titanicking through these ice sheets and messing around with them and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's never dull. It's never dull, and it's never too extreme for me. And I mean, I guess it can get extreme, but yeah, it's always fun. It's always an experience.
What before I really want to ask you, now that you mentioned the Devil's River and other rivers, we're gonna go into what are some of your favorite rivers and what rivers you recommend for people to try out to go fishing. Um if they're not used to doing kayak fishing from a river. But before we get into that, what safety tips do you say that do you recommend other than obviously wearing the PFD and all that? But I think a lot of people that go from like myself with pretty much big water lakes, um and then what should I know that may not be completely obvious to a novice about fishing in rivers, especially where you live in Central Texas?
You should know what kind of river it is, what kind of flows to expect. I mean, and all that stuff. I mean, we've got the interweb at our hands. I mean, you can look up all that kind of stuff. There's a website out there. I mean, American Whitewater will eat. I mean, they cater more towards whitewater rivers and labeling classes of rapids and difficulty ratings and that kind of stuff. But there's plenty of the major rivers here in Texas. There's plenty of beta on those rivers as well. As far as what to expect. And then they give you kind of an idea of where a good flow rate is. What as far as like where a good level is at. But now I remember your question now.
Well, what it was like, and you hit I think you hit the nail on the head. That's one thing I do.
Like being prepared. Yeah,
being prepared.
Know the weather. Know the weather for sure. I mean, and then like you said, have the right gear. I mean, expect to be in the sun, expect to be in the shade, expect to to get wet, expect to I mean, don't take anything on your boat that you're not willing to lose, because it happens. And I definitely would say definitely go with somebody. I spend a lot of time on the rivers by myself, but not in extreme conditions. If I'm doing if this weekend's rain brings several inches to the hill country and the water raises to 1,000 CFS, I'm going to be out there, but I'm not going to be out there by myself. Like I'm going to get some of my buddies that know how to navigate the river, and we're going to have fun. I'm hoping, I have fingers crossed that, I really need these rivers to fill back up this year. Cause it's just, the Guadalupe River got down to 0 in a lot of places last year. It was, the bacteria growth, it was unsafe to even go swimming in the middle of the summer. It was hard to find anything around here. And even the San Marcos, like back in the day when I was talking about, going there and play boating at Rio Vista. I mean, the average flow of the San Marcos was about 300 CFS. Nowadays, it's I think 100, a little over 100 CFS, and it seems to be like that's the new norm, which is strange in one aspect, but I understand we're in a drought and all that kind of stuff, but Texas has really been growing, and there's all these, I like to call them designer ranches that pop up around the hill country, and people like to make their own ponds, and there's no regulations on them, drilling wells and just sucking the aquifers dry. And I feel like that has a little bit to do with it. I'm no scientist. I can tell you, whether it does or not, but, but like, that's really kind of an important thing, is to know what to expect. Cause I'm pretty sure like Eric told you on this when he came on your podcast that I listened to, he's done rivers that, they've had to drag a couple of miles over just, dried up rock beds. So, that's always possible too. Google Maps is a good help. It kind of, you can measure distance. You can see, how far, it is from point A to point B, to kind of, plan ahead of time and make sure that, you can, if you start measuring it out and it looks like a 12 mile float, you're probably not going to comfortably do that in a day unless the water's really moving, So, having good gear, making sure that you and your boat and your equipment are prepared, and just, you know, basically just being safe, really. And then, of course, you know, just kind of respecting other people, respecting the rivers. I mean, all too many times, man. I always keep a mesh trash bag on my boat, and I'm always picking up trash, you know. And sometimes it's accidental, you know. Sometimes it's from people kayaking, they dump over, and all of a sudden, you know, all their sunscreen and their, you know, their empty beer cans or whatever are floating by, and it's just, yeah. So I mean, definitely just kind of keep everything, you know, nailed down, and you know, plan for the unexpected.
Yeah.
That's what I would really kind of go at.
And I think let somebody know, like, even if you go by my, like,
oh, for sure,
myself,
yeah.
like, to me, when I go out, I used to doing the I used to like pick up while I'm driving. I decide where I want to go. Sometimes my wife will ask me, when are you going? Like,
yeah.
I'll probably figure out like 5 minutes into my drive. Like,
Yeah.
What I've done now is I just put on my iPhone, I just share my locations. Like, wherever you see me, that's where I am. So I think it's important to, you know, let your loved ones know where you're going, and, you know, like, maybe with the technology now, you can just share your location, definitely, and stuff like that. But I think that's very important. I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you know, what you enjoy most about making these reels, because, like I mentioned, your account is one of my favorite ones. It's very I know it always seems like lighthearted, like fun, like joyful, and you can tell you're having fun. Some of my favorite account, like I mentioned, Eric Celerio, Skinny Water Boys TV. What do you enjoy most about, you know, recording these reels and putting them up on Instagrams? How did you got into that?
My dad gave me a GoPro a long time ago when they like first came out. I've still got it. It's like the original GoPro. It's hilarious to look at. It's just like a brick with a lens on it. And I had the bright idea back in the day of just mounting it to a extendable paint pole and then sticking it in a rod holder. And when I was, you know, running some of the rivers and stuff, and then it's just kind of progressed from there. And then I got into just kind of taking pictures, and maybe I didn't do a whole lot with the videos when I started out. I just kind of had them, put them on a computer, you know, whatever. But and then Instagram started to pick up a little bit, and I started putting pictures and that kind of stuff on it. And then they switched to like recently they switched to the whole reel algorithm. And you know, I was kind of timid at first, and I just kind of, you know, I was like, oh, well, I can start to like put some of this stuff together. And then, you know, you'd be surfing through some reels or something, you come across, and you're like, oh, I could make a, you know, a cool little small reel with this audio, or, you know, this kind of I guess like a template or whatever they had, you know. Yeah. And I had a couple of good ideas. I still got a couple more that haven't come to fruition yet, but I don't know. I just kind of want to highlight, and I'm not real. I haven't been real into, you know, the whole growth aspect of Instagram. If people want to follow me and they want to see what I'm doing, that's great. But like, I really kind of I like being able to, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess I just want to like kind of categorize or, you know, leave that little bit of a footprint on the internet of like, you know, what I used to do. Cause I mean, one of these days I'm going to be too old to be able to do this kind of stuff. Yeah. And, you know, I want my children's grandchildren to like go back and be like, oh, look at grandpa. He was epic, you know? I don't know. I don't know. I guess I could think about, you know, that kind of stuff to it. And I never switched to, you know, the whole business platform of Instagram or anything like that, because I don't know, it seems too corporate. It seems like they want to just suck money out of you. You know, you switch it. I used to run the Instagram account for where I work. I work at a truck accessory place, so we do a lot of like customization of vehicles and stuff. And I used to run that, and then we got a media guy, and he switched it to a business profile, and like all those followers that I got just completely, I mean, it fell off. The growth stopped, all that kind of stuff. And it's exactly because Instagram's like, oh, you're a business. Here, if you want people to see your stuff, you need to start paying.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to see all these analytics behind everything, and that's great and everything. But now you just want, I mean, just keep it organic, keep it natural, that kind of stuff. And that's just kind of, I mean, that's kind of where it was. I'm basically just trying to leave a footprint. It's something that'll stay for, I mean, pretty much forever. I feel like, I mean, unless it's like MySpace and it just deletes everything eventually. So
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like we think about, like Egyptian ancient culture, like Egyptians or whatever. We see all this, pyramids and all that. We think about like 2,000 years from now, where they're gonna be like, oh my god, they used to have this things called GoPro and this phone. We never know we never know what that's gonna end. But what I do like, and what makes me sad about, like you mentioned, the whole corporate side of social media, like to me, one of the most enjoyable social media accounts are the ones that are not trying to impress the corporate side of Instagram. They're just doing what you did. And I, for one, I know we're doing the podcast and trying to grow the Bass Kayak and Beers brand, you sometimes get sidetracked on it, right? And you get sucked into that rabbit hole. And one of the things that I've gotten used, well, before I now started working, which is I'm a little bit busy right now, but last year, what I did is like, man, I'm gonna stop trying to gimmick. Now I'll do something if I find something that I think it's funny, then I might, reshare it and all that. But the most part, I've gotten to a point where it's like I want to show what I love doing, and I don't love sitting on my computer for 8 hours and trying to get creative about a video.
yeah,
What do I love doing? I love fishing and I love hooking into big bass. So guess what? From now on, I'm not gonna even care what Instagram does with my reels. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm obviously gonna edit out a little bit because I'm gonna put a 1 minute long video of me reeling in the bass. You cut it into the sections, you make it out to like 10 15 seconds, right? But that's what I love about your Instagram. That's what makes me sad, because since you're not abiding by what they want you to do, they don't really share your videos outside to get promoted. So a lot of people don't get to see the enjoyable side of what you do, which to me it's more fun than watching gimmicky promotions and all that. And I understand, everybody as a brand, kind of like Bass Kayak and Beers, I understand the other side of it. I'm not hating on it.
yeah,
It's sometimes you have to play the game, and I know there's a lot of content creators out there that want to make a living out of this, and they have to, play to pay kind of thing, or pay to play. Instagram won't show my videos unless I do this. All right, I'm gonna do it just so I can get their views.
yeah.
But it's sad in the sense that, like, your account, it may not get the highest view, but I guarantee you, anybody who watches your video is going to enjoy it more than the most videos out there that are just gimmicky and clickbaitish or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah.
And I commend you on that, and I hope you always stay with that, because it really is enjoyable just watching your videos. You have like a GoPro 360, and what's your setup like?
Yeah, so I've got a GoPro 360 that I use. Those don't last long. I mean, it when
Really?
you're filming, I mean, it eats up a lot of memory, especially when you're running it.
It's not durable.
It's battery too. I mean, the battery
okay.
goes out quick. The memory, it eats up memory real quick. And then like the lenses on them, because they're like a big bubble plastic fisheye lens, you got to be really careful with them. They're easy to scratch, and you cannot replace them. So like they're kind of fragile, but I mean, the pictures that it gets, like if I've got it set up just right, it literally looks like a drone is like following right behind my head. And it's such a clean video that I'm like, I love to just see the aftermath of what the video can capture, when you run like a smooth little line down a rapid, or, and the fact that you can, when you edit it, you can turn the view wherever you want all the way around. So, I mean, you're fishing down a river and you see something bust on the bank, and you're like, oh, I'm going to chase it up with, a lure right behind it and see if I can hit that bass too. I mean, you can turn that camera and it'll look straight at where you want it. without having to like reach around you and reposition the camera, and like those aspects are really cool. But a lot of my content comes from just a regular old GoPro Hero 8. And then I've also got a DJI drone that I'll put up every once in a while. It's taken a couple of swims, but so that, and they're kind of cumbersome to like set up and get it set. Like you've got to what do they call it? I guess you got to calibrate the compass every time you start those things up. So it's kind of a whole ordeal to get that thing going. But man, it gets some epic shots, but it can also spoil your places and kind of let people know exactly where you are in some cases, which I'm not real big on, letting a whole lot of people know. I mean, that kind of, and I learned that from Albert and Eric and Manny and, all those guys. We kind of started picking in and fishing with each other, and we'd show each other spots and we'd take each other's spots. And then, you don't want to like spot blast where you're going and all that kind of stuff. But, and it's not that I want to be, stingy with that kind of stuff, but like, if somebody took the time to find an area or like, break down a certain water and then they find out that there's good bass or something like that, I mean, they put in that work. Why should somebody, be like, hey, where are you fishing at? And, and if you don't answer them, they're like, oh man, you just, whatever, call you names, whatever they want to do, but like, yeah, it's kind of like, I put in the work. I encourage you to put in the work. It's not hard. It's not hard to get out there and find good spots that, a whole lot of other people don't know about or anything like that. But, it's so, yeah.
No, I get it. Like, I totally respect that, because like you said, it's one of those things where, especially when you're talking about river fishing, which is not like, big lake where, everybody knows the lake, like Lake Fork. Everybody knows, everybody that loves bass fishing knows Lake Fork, and all that. And there's areas everywhere. But when you're talking about a little like skinny water river, that's more of a niche. Then I get it. Like, it's kind of like isolated areas that, if you really want to explore and you really want to enjoy it, do it yourself. Like, I get it. Sometimes I'll see a video, I'm like, oh man, I need to find out where that spot is, and that's fine. I mean, that's natural. We all want to find bass, and if we have
just put in the work, and if you see somebody fishing a spot, I mean, nobody's gonna be mad at you for being like, okay, what kind of bank's there, what kind of trees are behind them, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's work, that's doing work, that's figuring out a spot and that kind of stuff. But you still got to find, exactly where it is, and you got to present it to, if you're trying to catch that big fish that they just nailed or something like that. I mean, you gotta go present your bait at them and hope that it goes. Like the biggest fish that I've caught on the Guadalupe, it was, I think 3 years ago. It's my personal best river fish, and it was I think it was 6 pounds, 7 ounces, 22.5 inches long. And which is a good fish for, small, skinny water out here. But, and I dream about it all the time. I'm like, I just want to go back and see her again and catch her again. Haven't even seen her. Haven't seen anybody else catch her. Nothing. I mean, I'm sure she's great, but, you still got to put in that work. Every cast is a little bit different on the rivers. So, and fish move up and down too. They're not always in the same spot. But
especially with the river, where everything kind of changes, with the
it's always changing.
It's always changing. Where a lake is more like, unless it's a drastic, releasing water from the lake, it's pretty much going to be kind of like the same all year long.
Yeah.
I know, like Manny and Eric, watching on the YouTube videos and all that, and talking to Manny and both Manny and Eric, I know they had their deal with angry homeowners. It's just because they feel they own the land, they own the river too, which is not correct at all. Have you had to deal with stuff like that?
Yeah, unfortunately, you get into some of these headwaters and up there, and these really nice like I was talking about these designer ranches that people are building in the hill country and all that kind of stuff. And they put up a high fence. So they're like, oh, I own the wildlife and I'm up to the river, so I own these fish. And they put up fish feeders on the river, and some people stock them with fish and that kind of stuff. And they think they own it all. I mean, but the reality of the situation is, Texas doesn't have any public lands, hardly any.
No, 1%.
This is what we have.
Yeah.
This is what we have. I mean, so that was kind of a big aspect to me because, like, I'm an outdoorsy guy, but there's not a whole lot other than like some state parks around here and some natural areas and your city and town parks and that kind of stuff. But like rivers, you're kind of, I mean, that's your public lands, that's your public waters. I mean, we have every right to explore them, and I take advantage of it. But yeah, I have had a couple of people, I'm gonna call the game warden, and it's like, okay, do it. There's also a law against harassing fishermen. So in case you were wondering about that too. And then, and like, what was it? One of the last times I did the Devil's River, actually a homeowner shot a shotgun in our direction, which was interesting. So, but the park ranger knew about it right afterwards, and he was like, oh, I know that guy. He's had other problems with other people, but not directly at us. I mean, he was a couple 100 yards away. I mean, we would have been peppered if anything, but just it was kind of like a don't stop around here kind of a thing. Yeah. Keep it moving. But you run into some landowners, and most of the time, you just kind of tell them like, yeah, sure. If you want to call the game warden, call the game warden. Make sure you tell them that I'm in the water and I'm not on land, and and then just keep going. Just try to brush it off as much as you can.
Don't let it get to you.
Yeah, it does happen in Texas. So
yeah, it's crazy. What are some of your favorite rivers that you fished here in Texas that you would recommend?
That I fished, man. I mean, the Guadalupe is my home river, so I love that river. It's maybe not the most exciting river, but it's close. It's got a lot of memories for me, my family, and my friends that I've grown up with, and all that kind of stuff. So that's probably number one. Number two would probably be like San Marcos, just because that one's always running. That's got a little bit to do with my love, my upcoming love of rivers and that kind of stuff too. And then the Devils is great. I've done that, like I was saying earlier, I've done that river a couple of times. It's not what it used to be, but it's still a great fishery. You could still catch, wonderful fish out of that river as far as largemouth and their signature smallies with their crazy designs that they've got on those fish.
Yeah.
That's just like an epic place. I'll always tell people you need to go to the Devils before you die. I don't care if you get a guide. I don't care if you do it on a float raft or something like that. Just go. It's awesome. It's great.
Yeah, that's definitely on my bucket list. What other rivers you like?
It's just really around here. So you've got the Delano River is a little bit further north. That's a great river, completely different scenery than where I'm at. It's only about an hour and a half to 2 hours from here. So not too terrible, but and then I've made a couple of trips to the Frio, and the lower Colorado is a really nice fishery as well. Just basically anywhere south of Austin, that's a great run to do as well.
What is your bucket list of rivers that you haven't fished but you definitely want to fish, whether it's in or out of Texas?
The Pecos for sure. As far as in Texas goes, the Pecos. I ever since doing the Devils and watching its popularity grow, and then finding out about the Pecos River, and you would think that the Devils is really remote, and it kind of is. It's pretty remote, but the Pecos is a whole nother level. You're talking, you run into wild horses that just live up and down the riverbank.
Really?
And oh yeah, it's in the Indian artifacts and pictographs and all that kind of stuff that are around that area. from the Apaches early in the
That's awesome.
in the years. I mean, it's wild as can be for sure. So like that's probably a big one, but I really want to get out east and do some of the southeast rivers, over towards like Georgia and Tennessee and all that kind of area. That looks like a lot of fun. I mean, I follow a lot of accounts out of the east, and like I get super jealous of their constant flows. And it's kind of funny because like they're always complaining like, man, it rained too much last night. Look at the river. And I'm like, that looks like so much fun. I don't care if the fish are biting. It's like, man, that looks like so much fun. I wish that would happen here like on the daily too. But yeah, and then the Brazos, I really want to get up to the Brazos and do below like PK. That looks like a lot of fun.
I'll tell you this: it's not as fun or as beautiful as.
Don't ruin it for me.
No. As far as like you being a whitewater, like it's really calm water. I mean, depends obviously on the water release level, but assuming the water release level is at what typically is like somewhere between 90 and 100. It's just a slow paddle.
Yeah.
What you will, I guarantee you, is a big largemouth bass. Like those, there are some heavy largemouth bass and stripers too. Like there's some huge stripers down there. There's some bull stripers, especially after they released like a whole bunch of water, which hasn't happened in a while. But I love the Brazos, but I mean it's not really skinny water. Like it's really open. But yeah, if you ever come down this way, please let me know. I'll take you to the Brazos River, man. It is awesome. It is. I'm sure it's not going to be as fun, but I'll guarantee you're going to catch some big bass.
No bad days on the river. No bad days on the river.
No, the river. No, definitely not. Anyways, Aaron, I was going to say Aaron. Thomas, thank you so much for joining me. I've had you for almost an hour. I know you're a family man. I know there's some people watching on Facebook and YouTube. For those that are watching, if you have any questions for Thomas, now's the time to answer. I'm going to give Thomas a few more minutes so you can, shout out whoever you want to shout out. I know you're now with TC Kayak and Canoes, TG Kayak and Canoes, which also have a great entertaining account, by the way, on Instagram. So anybody that you want to thank, sponsors, and again, anybody watching on our YouTube or Facebook, if you have a question for Thomas, feel free.
Yeah. I mean, TG is great. I've bought. They're right there in San Marcos. TG Canoe and Kayaks. Alex, Justin, Evelyn, and Dwayne at that place are just they're great people. I mean, I've been buying boats from them. I probably bought about 5 boats from them over the years, and I mean, they're right on the edge of the San Marcos River. They will do demos. Just drive you down there. I mean, you want to call ahead, make sure that you get it all taken care of ahead of time so they know that you're coming and that kind of stuff. But yeah, TG Canoe and Kayaks they're just it's a family-owned business. They're wonderful people. And I mean, even if they didn't pick me up as a sponsor, I'd still be shouting them out. It's such a great place to get, canoes, kayaks, paddling gear, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm not technically sponsored, but Crescent has really been very helpful for me. Like I said, I pulled the trigger on a Crescent light tackle a little over a year ago, and before they came out with the Shoaly, and now I'm about to get into a Shoaly. So I mean, that boat, I've looked it over, I've paddled it a couple of times. I got a buddy that owns one, and it's just a great boat. And then everybody over there, I mean, they share my stuff, which I don't really ask them to, but they do, just because I guess they like it. They like the way that I can, kind of portray and at least, show them how their product works down here in Texas. And so they've been excellent people as well. So
yeah, Crescent Kayaks, I mean, great group of people over there, of top to bottom. Scott Butcher, Drew Gregory, there's some of the best people you'll meet, and people that are really passionate. Jeff Little, who I know has worked a little bit with Crescent, and he, they're to the core, they're river fishermen.
Absolutely.
And it's in their soul, it's in their DNA, and it reflects on their products. And that's what I love about it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
definitely. So Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it. I am looking forward. What's next for you and your social media account? What can people look forward to? And again, where can people follow you in social media?
Primarily just Instagram. So TX_river_junkie is my handle on Instagram. I'm not flooding the news feed every day, but I usually get out and kayak at least once a week. And so, if there's something interesting, I'll make a little reel, or I'll post a picture or something like that about it. But as far as in the future, I mean, man, I'm really hoping we've got good rain in the forecast for this weekend. So I'm kind of hoping that'll seed the rivers, and it'll lead into a good summer of paddling. But I taught my 7-year-old to paddle, and she can paddle my boat around with my paddle. She can paddle her little boat around. She knows how to self-recover and a bunch of other stuff. So it's like a little bit of at least this year too, will be family content. Just kind of showcasing that. I like to, kind of encourage people to get, their kids, or anybody's kids, really, as long as it's okay with them, but to get them on the river and, show them what it's like, and, kind of introduce them to that kind of a sport. Yeah. A little bit of that, and then I'll also here in about a month I'll be heading up to Colorado to go to a whitewater festival. So there'll be a little bit from that, and who knows, maybe I'll do some rafting, or I'll take one of my whitewater boats. They're having quite a bit of good runoff this year, so I'm kind of intimidated with the flows of those rivers.
Yeah.
but
got a lot of snow melt.
Yeah, and it's still snowing. It's snowing up there today, so we'll see how that all goes.
Man. I love Colorado. Snowboarding, skiing, I love that.
Yeah.
So, and I know they got a dump of snow this year, so I know those rivers are going to be like crazy this summer.
Yeah. So a little bit of that, and a whole lot of fishing, a whole lot of river living. So
that's awesome, man. It's no better way. Really.
Yes, sir.
So again, Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been an honor, a pleasure to have you on the podcast. And I mean, looking forward to what you're gonna bring on your social media platform. Like I said, I always enjoy your fishing. I enjoy you, when you're taking the family and all that. It seems like it's fun and just good vibes all around. So congratulations on what you're doing. Hope you never change that.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
No problem. So for those out there listening, thank you for watching. And if you're listening also, like I said, on our MP3 formats, we appreciate it. Go check out my sponsor, Douglas Outdoors. Check out the full line of LRS X Matrix and award-winning fly fishing rods. They're amazing rods. And again, if you're new to our podcast, we have a podcast every Wednesday. That is with Dan Perry. He's our host of the Advanced Kayak Angler, where he does teaching and tips and tricks on kayak fishing, and the real life, which is live on YouTube, on Facebook, and on MP3 formats every Monday. We take to talk to personalities and great people like Thomas Griffin about their love for kayak fishing. So thank you again. If you're going to be on the water, wear your PFDs. You get a couple of beers. Just make sure you drink responsibly. Make sure you make it back home to your loved ones. This is the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast. Have a great day, everyone. Peace out.
Bye.